Reg, jou desktop wys 100%. Ek het hom nou gestuur na die live toe. Daar so 90 sekondes delay. Ek is ook op die live gedeelte en dan sal ons sien of hy daarso ook wys. As jy my kan hoor, jy kan jouself unmute.
Is ons klaar live of nog nie?
Live, ja. Ek is hier op die live link.
So kan die kinders ons al hoor?
Dis reg, die kinders kan ons hoor.
Hi there guys. Welcome to STEM Lockdown Digital School. We'll start just before 11 or at 11. And there is a Q&A that you guys can ask questions in. So we're going to look at the final of 2019 question 1. If you've done it, open it on your computer so that you can have a look at the memo that I will provide you with.
Just minimize this, the bottom right on your screen. There's a call going on. Just minimize that one for us, please. Thank you.
So I won't see the questions immediately. You guys can send me your questions through the Q&A, and then our host will then read the question to me so that I can answer you guys. If you just joined us, you can ask questions through the Q&A, and our host will read the questions to me. And if you have done the final of 2019, question 1, I'd like you to open that. And as we go through the memo, you can maybe just check your answers. Okay, guys, welcome to STEM Lockdown Digital School. This is information technology for grade 12. We've moved over now to Teams, so maybe if your friends are struggling to get in, it's important that they get the Microsoft Teams app. It does not want to work through a browser, so you have to get it installed on a device and then click on the link. You don't need a username or password for Teams. You just need the app and then you can join anonymously. And we'll take questions through the Q&A and then you will be able to ask questions as we go along. Please make use of that so that if something's unclear, you can tell me and our host will then read the questions to me because they're not available to me all the time. Okay, so let's start. I said to you guys that you should try and do the final of 2019 question 1 for today. So I'm just going to use the PowerPoint, but I have Delphi open here if needed. And what we're going to do, this is question 1.1. So this question, let's just go through the basics. Sorry, yes, our Haridas are back again. You can hear it's me, since the Haridas are in the background. So what general things that you need to look at, and this is not just for question 1, is you need to look at the screenshots. For example, the input. Okay, this is a spin edit. So spin edits will always provide us with integer input. But if this was an edit box, still indicating an integer value here, you also need to declare a variable of integer data type. There are specific marks allocated for declaring variables and also for using string to int or string to float, whatever is appropriate. So that is the easy marks that we allocate in final exams to the question papers. So you don't want to lose out on those. Okay, so if we read this question, they say that we're selling pizzas at a tuck shop at 14 Rand 95 each. And then we have to do the following. So the first bullet there got learners very confused last year since it says declare a constant variable. So those terms are actually contradictory because we want to think of a constant as not being a variable, but actually a constant is a variable. A variable is just something that you're going to declare that can hold a value. And the difference between the variables that we usually declare and a constant is that a constant can't change its value, whereas our other variables can. So you had to declare a variable called price and then assign it to 14.95. Now, you can declare the constant as global, but it would make more sense in this case to declare it locally because we're only using it in this one button. Then it says declare 2 variables to store the number of pizzas ordered and the amount due. So number of pizzas are coming from our spin edit. So you need an integer variable. And then the amount due, since you're multiplying it with this constant, that would be real. Then you had to change the font size of the label that I'll still show you guys, and then retrieve the number of pizzas. Now, the word retrieve really means store the input from the user, and this is coming from the spin edit. And then it says calculate the amount, and then you had to display in the label. Now, in this instance, they did tell us to format the output as a currency. But if they didn't say that, there could still be marks allocated since the screenshot is showing you that. Remember my previous lessons, I told you guys about the hidden question. So if it's showing a currency here, it means you have to use float to string F with FF currency. Do not use float to string anywhere. You're not allowed to use float to string. So make sure that you look at the output as well. Is it currency and how many decimal places are showing? So just before we continue with the memo, I wanted to show you guys this. The question asked us to change the font size of the label. So I if you're unsure of something similar that is asked in an exam, what I suggest you do is go to your form, click on the object that you have to change, and go to your object inspector. And then, oh goodness, Arida, and then the object inspector is going to give you hints what your code should be. So at the top of my object inspector, it has the label name here, LBL question, whatever. So my code will go LBL something dot font dot size. So if I wanted to change the color, it would be LBL the name dot font dot color. Make sure you spell color the American way, since this is referring to a property in your object inspector. Then in here, they could ask you numerous things, but the line here is kind of like the line that you see in the middle between the property and the value. That is like your assignment. That's where your assignment statement will go. If it starts with something like a CL, that means that you have to write the code CL, and then this says window text, but let's say it was CL blue on the right, no quotes around it. If the height then is a number, you can see there it indicates a number, or the size, then you'll just put a number down. It could also be a variable. And then when it is the name, like this here, where it doesn't have CL or any other character beforehand that actually indicates some code written behind it, this here needs to go in quotes on the right. So that's really the options that you have when you are it's usually question 1.1, where you have to make these changes to objects but using code. Just remember that you will not get any marks for changing anything in your object inspector. You have to write code for it. We do not mark the changes in the object inspector. Okay, so let's quickly have a look at then the memo to this question. Here we have the constant that I declared. So CONST, and then price as the name of my constant. And remember, when we're declaring constants, it's equal, and then we put the value there. Price will now take on the data type as indicated here on the right by you. If you put this in quotes here, price would be a string. But if you leave it like this with the decimal point, now it's going to be real. And if you just had 14 without decimal point, it's going to be an integer. And very important is that you declare variables, because there were marks allocated here for declarations of our variables. And then we had to get input from our user. So, sorry, I keep on losing my mouse here. So if we have using a spin edit, the spin edit has a .value property. Value is an integer data type. So I don't need string to int here. I can just put the value property inside of the integer variable directly. There is a text property, and then you have to string to int it. So that's just, you're just wasting time because you have extra code that you have to add. Remember, a spin edit has the value property. That's the great thing about a spin edit, is that we don't need to do typecasting using string to int. And then we had to calculate the amount outstanding using your price. So I'm just going to take a sip of water. So if we take price and we multiply it now with the integer, that is going to give us a real answer. So that's why our amount here on the left is real. Now I want you to see how I coded as well. It's important for you to code in such a way that it is easy for the markers to mark your code. So between any begin and an end, you want to push tab once. So as I've done here, and if you do it for the first line and you hit enter, your cursor stays there and you're going to code neatly beneath each other. You don't need to put input processing and output comments there, but it is a good idea to have your input and a line open, processing a line open, and then the rest of your code for your output. So here is the code that we are using to change the font size. We have the label name, dot font, dot size is assigned to 20. And then we have the label, dot caption, and in here we have floater string F, very important. You're not allowed to use floater string. Your variable, and it's a currency, so you have to use FF currency. Comma 10 you can leave as is. What that really means is there's 10 spaces available for this number to display. That includes the integer and the decimal part, and your full stop also takes up one of these spaces. So 10 is usually enough when we're displaying. I think there was one paper, one supplementary one year where we actually had to use a number higher than 10. Where they used a very large number, but in finals we've never had to change that to another number. So 10, you can just always put down 10, you don't have to try and calculate it beforehand. And then the comma 2 is how many decimal places are showing. So this is question 1.1. Please guys, you're welcome to ask some questions as we go along. Just ask a question about the question we are at, and my host will then read the question to me so that I can answer you. I can't see the chat all the time, but he is watching the chat for me. Well, not the chat, the Q&A. That's where you want to ask questions. Okay, so here's the next question. So question 1.1 is usually our easy question. Question 1.2 then often asks us to apply some kind of formula, and they give you the formula. So sometimes we have to calculate the volume of a cylinder, or maybe it was some other mathematical or accounting formula, but the formula is given and you just have to convert that formula into a Delphi code. So here we are using Pythagoras here. You guys have all done this in grade 8 and 9 maths. And now we need to look here. Here's a screenshot of the output, and here's our formula. But here's what we need to do. Declare variables for sides A, B, and C. And I wouldn't declare them yet until I know what they're going to hold. So if we look at the next bullet, it says assign the value of 4 to the variable for side A. That means that we will need to declare an integer for side A. So I just called mine IA. Then the next one says extract the length from the side B from this edit box. Now, in order to know what data type this must be, have a look there at the example of input and output. Here you can see the length of side B should be real. So you should have a real variable and you string to float it and store it in a real variable. And then the next one here says calculate the length of side C.
Sorry, ma'am, you were muted there. There's a question, will I lose marks if I don't use an intermediate variable like R amount first? Also, just please unmute yourself.
Okay, here we go. Can you guys hear me still, I hope? So you are asking if we have to use was it on this one, the R amount? Yes, you could lose marks. So you asking if you can leave out R amount and put that calculation in here. So there are two scenarios, and I cannot answer you what will happen this year for this question. So it depends on the memo for that year for that question. So it's dangerous to put your formulas in your output. Keep your processing separate and use your output just for output. So if in here you left out this variable and there was a mark allocated to declare the variable, then I think it left now. So there could be a mark for declaring the variable. Then you'll lose that marks because you didn't declare a variable, even though your code is working exactly. So make sure that you declare variables, keep your input, processing, and output separate as far as possible. Don't put processing inside of your output. Your other problem is, I don't know if you guys know, but when we matric mark, we mark from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We get 2 15-minute tea breaks and a 45-minute lunch, not even an hour. So it's humans marking your program and they do get tired. So let's take the scenario of there wasn't a mark allocated in here for declaring the variable, and you did this in there, and this tied marker just didn't see it because it's expected there, and this is what the memo is going to look like. So first of all, there could be marks that you will lose, and second of all, you don't want to take the risk that someone misses something that you do. We'll also go have a look at where you should be coding. These first questions are easy, but some of the other questions then have provided code, and you have to be careful of where you're coding. So you're sure that everyone knows where you've put your answer, but that I will show you later. Okay, so we were here at C and we need to declare a variable for C. So square root, I was saying, has a real result. Remember, every function has a result, and square root is one of those functions that will always have a real result. Same as your operator with a divide. Power as well as one of those functions that will return a real result, and round to, even if you're rounding to 0 decimal places, they will all provide you with a real result. Now, just simply for square root, the reason why square root is always producing a real value is Delphi does not know what you're putting inside of the square root as an argument in the round brackets. So if you send it an integer, the result of square root isn't always an integer. If it's a perfect square, like for example 16, sure, it's 4. But if you give it 17, it's 4 point something. So now it's not an integer answer anymore. And for that reason, square root always produces a real answer. And then the last bullet just says that you have to display. Again, they helped you here to say how many decimal places you had to display, but this could be one of those hidden questions. Make sure you look at the output. See there that only 1 decimal place is displaying, so therefore there would be marks for that. Make sure that your output matches exactly. Now, I just want to stop here and talk about, I want to take this time when we're going through the papers, talking about general things in a question paper. Now, we've had previous final exam papers that have errors in them. They've never been major, but let's say a typical error that could occur is the wording here said 1 decimal place, and the screenshot now is showing 2. You will always follow the wording. So the wording trumps the screenshots. So that you need to keep in mind. If there is a discrepancy, you can't ask your teacher, and your teacher can't answer you in your final exams. You will go back to your wording and you'll see what did the wording say, and the wording will trump the screenshot. So make sure you do that. Okay, so let's have a look at this here. So here's my integer for the A, and we had to set it to 4. Then B was input using string to float from my edit box. Use your string to float inside of input. Don't use your string to float inside of this processing here. Use your string to float and your string to int in input. It makes this just way too complicated actually to mark. Then your result here is a real value. That's your side C. And here's square root, and you'll see there's an open bracket here and a closed bracket there. So all of this is on the inside of square root. So I'm squaring IA plus the square of RB. What some of the learners did last year is they said square, and in the round brackets, they put A plus RB. Now you're doing the calculation correctly. You're not applying the formula. I'm going to go back one slide. A must be squared plus B must be squared. Not as a combination added together, they must be squared. So they each must be squared, added together, and that answer then will be, we will use the square root on that answer. Okay, so now we have the output in the panel For those who haven't used the panel before, a panel also has a dot caption property with an assignment statement. And again, always use float to string f, never use float to string. My variable, this time f is fixed, comma 10, leave it as is, and comma 1 was very important to display that 1 decimal point. Okay, so let's have a look at our next question. So now we are on question 1.3. Please continue to ask questions in the Q&A so that we are able to assist you guys. So important here, this is also a little trick with all your questions. When you open the question for the first time, before you even start coding, I know you're eager to code, but before you click on that first button, just push F12 and look at what is given, what variables have been declared for me, what variables have been given values for me. Just general things that they would erase that they've declared for you. In question 3, the objects might be declared for you, well, most probably will be declared for you, but just have a look at what's been given because you are required, constants as well. A lot of learners have lost marks in previous years where constants were declared and they missed it somehow. And then there would be a mark allocated for using that constant, even if the question's not telling you use the constant. You have to look at what is given. So in this instance, they did tell us last year that our lowest was given and it was initialized to a value of 100. So you had to write code to do the following. You had to determine the lowest number. So every time the button is clicked, a random number is picked. This is a random number from 1 to 100. And then you have a local variable, number, and they provided this for you as well, where you had to store this number. This random number had to be displayed in the rich edit, and then you had to see if that random number is less than the previous value stored in iLowest, and then display iLowest in the question 1.3. Sorry, I'm just muting. Sorry guys, I hope I'm not coming down with a corona. Okay, so here we have iLowest that was declared at the top under private. And inform on activate iLowest got a value of 100. So here is the provided code. That was that integer variable. We had to pick a random number from 1 to 100. If you're using random range, number 1, remember you have to add the math unit to the uses if it wasn't added already. And then you have to pick a random number from 1 to 100. And random range excludes that second argument. So this picks a random number from 1 to 100. Even though it says 101, random range excludes that. Now let's just take an example of them not providing iNumber to us. If you have to pick a random number, most of the times, except for 1 year, it's an integer number. I think we did the random real one in our previous lesson. So if you have to pick a bigger pardon?
There's a question. It asks, what if the compiler gives you a problem with a currency string statement? I'm not sure. That was a question that was asked. What if the compiler gives a problem with a currency string statement? I think it's something you did maybe just a minute or two ago.
So yeah, there's a currency string statement in form on activate. If you're practicing at home, I think you can comment it out. I'm not sure if it's maybe your version of Delphi that's doing that. Our host is actually also an IT teacher. Maybe he knows. I don't know what the error was saying. But currency string allows you now to make that just really makes sure that if your Delphi wasn't set on South African rands, that it will still show the R and not maybe the dollars, and you are worried. So if it's giving you an error, you can comment that out and hopefully it shows in rands, but we're not marking your program to see if it's showing the rand symbol. If it's showing dollars, but you've used FF currency, you still get the marks. Because on the computers we run it, we will see your that it's showing in rands. It's just due to maybe some settings. So that string is ready to help you with your output if your computer was not set on South African currency. So you can comment it out so that your program runs. Oh, sorry. Okay, I was saying, if the random, if you ask to pick a random number, then and the variable was not provided for you, you want to store it as an integer. Remember, there are many. Yes.
Other question. If they use the word random instead of random range?
Yes, as long as your parameters are right. So that would be random range. What would that be, guys? Random 99 plus 1, I think. Yeah, random. You can use random, round brackets, 99. That will pick random numbers from 0 to, oh, I'm lying. Random 100. That will pick random numbers from 0 to 99. Plus 1. So if it picks a 0, it will be 1. If it then picks 99, it will turn to a 100. So both of those are correct. I just prefer random range because if they say 50 to 75, it's easy for me to just type in 50,76 without having to work out which number I have to add or something like that. But random is also allowed, and you will still, as long as you have the right range, you'll still score full marks. Your problem is with random values is marks are often lost there because you get the right output, but because the range is so wide, you actually don't know that you're not picking the number 100, and that's actually a little bit of an issue when we have random numbers being picked. Okay.
Sorry, another question. The randomize used with random.
Okay, we don't need to. Yeah, we don't need to use randomize anymore. That was for our old Delphi. Randomize was, so if you're running Delphi 2010, you don't need randomize. There's no marks allocated for randomize as well. So in the old Delphi that we used, the Delphi would pick the same random numbers every time you run it. So let's say the first time it picks 50 and the next time it picks 70. If you stop your program, you run it again, it picks 50 and 70 in that order again. So that's just the reason why we needed randomize. So randomize is not needed anymore. Even if you're not working on Delphi 2010, which I hope you all are, but if your school does not have Delphi 2010 for an exam, you don't need to add randomize in there. It's just going to waste your time. But it's not wrong to add it, but it's no longer needed. Okay, so random range. Remember, every function has a result. So we have random range will always produce an integer value, and it's important to store it as an integer. That was what I was saying. They gave us this code, but if you had to do it yourself, you also want to declare an integer value because you can use integers in case statements, in operators, maybe in an inc or decrement, so the DEC. So for that reason, it's very important to use the correct data types. Integers and chars, which are ordinal values, are often very easy to use if you've declared them correctly. So for that reason, it's also important to declare variables as the correct data type. If we have a look here, we have our output of this random number. So this always helps if you can see what random number was picked to see if your code is correct. And this here is very important if you look at your code that you compared inumber with ilowest and nothing else. You may not use your edit box here. Learners that use their edit box as the lowest number lost the marks here. You had to compare variables with each other. So the current random number, you had to test if it's smaller than ilowest, which was your global variable, and was set to 100 in form activate. And if it is, then you replace you had to replace iNumber with iLowest. You couldn't just now display iNumber in here. So learners that got right output lost lots of marks here because they didn't use their variables and they didn't assign their random number to iLowest. and then to output in an edit box, remember .text is assigned to, and you had to display in here iLowest, not iNumber. So those were very, very important concepts where learners lost marks for using the edit box all over in this if statement here. Okay, so this is now question 1.4. This was our last question for question 1. And typically you can expect a string handling and also well, I don't know, and or it's kind of and or and both. String handling questions you could expect in question 1, as well as then this question doesn't have one, but a while loop. So a while or repeat loop, a conditional loop. If you look at previous question 1 papers, you'll see that they will be in there. Okay, so what this said, and there were many solutions to this. I was hoping that you guys could send me screenshots on the Q&A, but apparently you can't. And typing your code in there is going to be a bit much to have a look at. But I'm going to show you 2 of my solutions, and maybe someone who has their own solution can post it for us, but I'll tell you guys when, and then we can try and see how the Q&A will work with that code. So basically what it said is you have a string, encrypted string like this, and all numbers had to be replaced with corresponding characters. So yeah, I have the other characters that are not numbers had to be ignored. So only 0 to 9 had to be replaced and the rest had to stay the same. This was the first string, but if you only tested this one, there's a chance that your code wasn't working correctly. You had to test all the other output as well, so which is right at the bottom there. So this is what our question says, use an input box. But if they said use a dialog box to get input from the user, that also means an input box. Now what I suggest you do, I'm just going to go back one, is this is the first example of input, this T8M4 exclamation. Put the first input as the default input in your input box. It would be much easier for you to test your program. It speeds up the running because now you don't have to type that in every time. And then when you see that it's working for this one, then only do you test for the others. Just while you're running, you can just type in the other options. So a dialog box for input would also be an input box. And then it says replace each digit contained in the encrypted string. And that was the table that we had. And then display the string in a message box. And lots of learners tried a message box code. What a message box or a dialog box means for output is a show message. You are allowed to use the message DLG as well. It's just lots more code for no more marks. Unless the question is maybe asking you for the user to click on yes or no. And by the way, this has never been asked in any previous paper, but it is something you guys need to know, so just be prepared for it. But only if the question says click on yes or click on no, not enter yes or enter no, then the clicking on yes and no, that would be a message dialog box, which is message DLG. In my previous lessons in SQL, I did cover the message dialog box if you guys want to have a look on YouTube for those. So this was just a show message, and very important that after that time question, the time input was working, is that you also tested these because these also had spaces in it. So this was important to check that you get the right output. So I'm going to show you 2 solutions. I had a third one, but I don't think it's a great solution, so I left that one out. You are allowed to declare extra values here, extra variables. I've declared constants here, and this is a little trick that I've used in many past papers. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a string snum, and yes. Is there a question?
No, sorry. I'm just saying we have 12 minutes left.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So we have the string here I declared from 0 to 9. So snum1 is 0, snum2 is 1. Then I created another string here that corresponds with what it needs to be replaced with. So 0 is A, 1 is B, and so on. So schar1 and snum1 is, well, snum1 needs to be replaced with schar1. So in that way, I found it easy to just replace characters. So here's my input. This is what I was talking about. Make sure for every input box, don't think you're going to get it right the first time. You're going to type it in anyway once. So in here, type in the default value so that when you're running, you just click to test. Here I'm looping through the string 1 to the length. There's no reason why you needed to use a while loop or repeat loop here. If we're doing string handling, use the simplest loop, and that would be our for loop, running from 1 to the length of S input. This yes could be in one line of code. I just broke it up for you. Here I'm looking at, let's say we're on character 1. I'm searching for character 1 in my constant snum. So if I'm searching T is character 1, I'm searching for it in there, IPOS would be 0. My if statement here now says, if IPOS is greater than 0, no, it's not greater than 0 for T. So it's going to ignore this code and it's going to loop again. Now I'm at 8 because K is 2. So I'm searching for 8 in snum. Does it exist? Yes, it does. And the path it's going to return for me here is going to be 9. That's position 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The corresponding character in IPOS, so character 9 is I. So I am placing I over that 8. And in this way, I'm replacing all these characters, numbers 0 to 9, with the corresponding characters in that table that was provided. And then my show message for S input, and that was it. And here is another solution. So we have the input, a little bit longer, but still correct. I have to add a few extra things here. So there's my input. I'm looping through the input as before, but I'm using my case statement since S input K would be a char. If S input K is a 0, then I'm building a string S new is assigned to S new plus the A. If it's 1, I add the B. So here I'm building the string, and remember when we use a variable on both sides of the assignment statement, you need to initialize it, and if there's a loop, initialize it directly above the loop. So there I'm setting it to an empty string. Now what was important if you use this method is that you had an else, because any other character that's not a character from 0 to 9 had to be added here to the string. So for T, it will go here and it adds T. If it's a space, it will add the space or the exclamation. But if it's an 8, so in our example, we'll add a T, then we'll loop again. It will be 8. We'll add an I. So now I have T and I is added to it. And the next time I'm looping, TI is here and I add M and so on. And then my show message here. I had another solution where I used the ASCII table, but then you have to actually know the ASCII values of your characters. In this example, you'll see everything was capital letters, so there was no need for uppercase here. There were no marks for it, but just make sure that maybe the next question does need it, is to use uppercase. And remember that when we want to capitalize our input in a case statement, you can't use uppercase. It changes the data type of that character to a string. So you have to use uppercase on chars. So that's why data types are important. Is there anyone maybe, if you have a different solution, you can copy and paste just this part, you know, the part after the input. I hope you all would get the input right. Maybe it's possible for me to quickly have a look and see what is in the questions so that I can see if someone else maybe had a different solution that would work. So I just want to go back and stop sharing. Am I in the right? I'm not sure I'm in the right place. I'm seeing only Renier here. No, I'm not in the right place. Renier.
Go back into your Teams and then just open the event from your calendar.
Okay, thank you. I didn't realize these two work separately. Okay. Yeah, I can see the Q&A now. So if anyone maybe has the okay, I don't think that's the right place. New questions. Okay, it seems like no one else wants to share their solutions with me. So that is fine. I'm just going to reshare my desktop to you. And we can go back here to the presentation. Okay, what I do want you guys to do before we end this lesson, I don't want to start now with question 2.1. So tomorrow I'm sure we're going to finish with question 2.1. It depends on how many questions you guys have, but it's not a long question. It's a very short question. And then we've done question 2.2. So for tomorrow, I'd like you guys to prepare for question 2, still final of 2019, question 2.1, and then question 3, because I think we will possibly be able to start with question 3.
There's a question. It says the following. I started doing something like this, and now it's the code. For I :equals 1 to length, and in round brackets, edtenc.text, do. Then begin.
Wait, edtenc?
Yeah, enc.text, yes.
What is enc? The input?
Most likely, yes.
Okay.
All right, then he goes on and he says, if not, and then in brackets, he calls edtenc.text, square bracket I, which is the loop variable, in ARR num, close round bracket then. So he's
AIR.
Yeah, ARR num, ARR num. So I think it's to do with most likely the statement. If not, round bracket.
Is that an array? Did the learner create? Is it possible for you to post that question for me?
Yeah, I've posted that, but that's all he gave in the copying. So I don't know if he posted, if he created that array. I'm just going to ask that learner, Mr. G, to post for us the array as well.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't think you can use in on an array in that way. I have actually never tried it, and it would probably not be considered first principle coding, if it's possible. Because if you want to use an array, that's fine. You can use an array, but you're going to have to loop through that array. You can't use an array. Yeah, I actually need to see. No, unfortunately, that's not going to work. So you can't say array equals to those values, and you can't say in. So you're going to have to look back. This is really about string handling. You're going to have to use a form of string handling. So yeah, hope that answered your questions. Okay, so as I said, for tomorrow, I hope you guys just tell me if you don't see my PowerPoint. For tomorrow, I need you guys to do question 2.1 and question 3, because I think we'll start with question 3. We definitely won't finish it, but we'll finish with 2.1. And that is, if you can download the past papers from here, And you can also go to my site for more information on Delphi and what you need to know. But on the Education Department site, click on Curriculum and National Senior Certificate, and then you can download your past papers from there. And we're busy with the final of 2019. Sorry?
He published, Mr. G published for us an ARR num, which is, I think, maybe a constant. So if you take a look in the live Q&A, it should be there under the published. So if you go to the published, yeah. So at the bottom, the word in will work with this type of array according to Mr. G. And AR num is the
but Mr. G, we're going back to first principle coding. So we can't use our arrays that way due to that first part that says you may not use, you have to code from first principles, and this is not first principles. So unfortunately, you won't get marks for that. In question 1, you're required to use string handling, so you have to loop through strings. And let's say you had an array declared with those values, you could loop through them, but then you're probably going to have a nested loop to complete that. Okay, so this brings us to the end of today, and we'll see you same time and place tomorrow. Can our host maybe just confirm the links are changing every day? Am I right?
Yes, that is correct. Every day you're going to get a set of new links. And the nice thing about this, even when this lesson is now finished and over and done with, you can still go back to the link and go and replay it. And if you've maybe got some form of downloader, you can even download this. But the YouTube links for this lesson will also be up next week.
And then do you maybe have on you the form that they have to complete if they want to get the link sent via email, that we can post it to them? Or is it on the Africa Teen Geeks Facebook page, isn't it?
Yes, it's on the African Teen Geeks Facebook page.
Okay. So guys, I think that's the best way for you to stay informed and share with your friends as well, is to go to Africa Teen Geeks, go on their Facebook page. There is an e-form that you can complete, and then you'll get sent the new links for every day via email. Usually early in the morning before 8. So please follow them. And also we have less people joining us because I don't think everyone really managed to get on. This is all brand new to everyone. So please can you spread the word that everyone needs to download the Teams app and then they can open these links. So see you guys tomorrow, same time. Same teacher, same host, different link. Bye.